Of course, at issue has been, in a lot of this, your guilty plea, which you did try to withdraw.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You said you say you're not guilty of the crimes that you were convicted of. Of course, the obvious question is, why did you plead guilty to these 5 crimes?
You know, this is a very technical area, and I don't want to abuse the courtesy that you've extended to me in terms of this interview, but this is very complicated, and we would probably use more tape than we've used up to this point for me to go through it. But suffice it to say, I followed advice that I got. The advice was not the right advice. And I found myself in the circumstance that I was in. I went through it, and I tried my very best to handle my demeanor, even in circumstances that you don't want to recall. And I affected positively the lives of an awful lot of people that I taught, that I helped, that I led them through their educational process. So this may have been, no question about it, a terrible, terrible, terrible situation for me and for my family. And day never goes by that I don't think in terms of this.
So, did Paul Kaiser lie?
You mean initially, or when, or
well,
this,
with his role in your conviction and with the $500,000 payment that was alleged to have been made?
Well, it wasn't alleged to be made. It was made, and it was made to me as a lawyer, and it was reported to me as a lawyer in my income taxes. I paid my income taxes on every nickel of that.
The payment, I thought it occurred in 1985 when you were governor. Okay, you were governor then, though.
Well, yes, but my case was my law case, and there were other cases. There are other cases that came up. I turned all of that over to other lawyers. I couldn't walk out on my clients. I would have probably been disbarred for doing that.
I think a lot of West Virginians, if they had the opportunity, they would want to ask you one question. Did you ever accept a bribe as governor?
Never. Now, I don't propose that this be a matter of a release. I'm in this capsule time frame, and I assume that in the sensitive time frames that I am presently in, that I'm not going to have my response to you. The answer is no. With every ounce of honesty that I have ever had, the answer is no.
I haven't heard you talk much about what prison was like. What was that? Obviously, it wasn't a pleasant experience, was it? But was it tougher than you expected, or easier? Or?
I think, in all fairness, that as open as I have been with you, that's not something that I want to talk about. It just is nobody can ever characterize it as being something that you would like to forget, but you can't.
Following the indictment of Wally Barron and others in his administration, you said, regardless of the guilt or innocence of those involved, great damage has been done to the image of West Virginia. We must once again apologize to the nation. Do you feel the same way about your legal problems?
Well, I don't think it helps one bit. But it doesn't help one bit.
A little bit back on the '62 election. You had to contend with some heavy hitters in the Democratic Party. President Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, former President Harry Truman.
That's right. Seeing all those in, there's there's a great story and a great event. It was a Friday evening. President Kennedy was due in Wheeling, and everything had been built up in terms of the fact the president was coming. My secretary come on the phone and said the White House is on the phone, and he had that pitch to his voice, that "Ach." I said, "Yes, Mr. President." He said, I've got to have some help. And I said, well, if I can help you, well, please let me know. He said, well, you've got something in your committee up there. So we visited a little bit, and then I said, you know, Mr. President, it's a little strange. I said, here we are talking, and tonight you're going to be in Wheeling, West Virginia, talking to, I know it's going to be a massive crowd, in support of my opponent in this election. Well, he says, Ach, you have to understand. You do some things because you want to. You do some things because you have to. Well, to make a long story short, what really happened, we had his speech taped. And the president got on that platform, and he started talking about the congressional election. And he said, you've got to understand, I have to have people that support me and people that help me in the Congress. And I want you to re-elect Arch Moore. Well, the audience absolutely went flat as a table. And then he said, or you've got to my friend Cleve Bailey, and so on down the line. And that turned out to be one of the great stories, because Harry Hoffman, who was the editor of the Gazette then, came up and indicated, he says, well, now that's Arch Moore. He'll take advantage of whatever the circumstances might be. And the truth of the matter is, that's not what the president said. So, in order to not take on Mr. Hoffman in the midst of a very heated congressional race, at Christmas time, my son and I cut a record that said, during the holiday season, we're going to refresh your memory and take you back to the President of the United States. Then they moved that tape in that I want Arch Moore reelected to the Congress. And you might realize that the first person that got that record for Christmas with a note of Merry Christmas was Harry Hoffman.
In your first campaign for governor in 1968, you were in a helicopter crash in Lincoln County 2 days before the election. Do you still get asked about that a lot? That's certainly part of your legacy.
Well, yes, there are those that say I was there, that I see and see quite often. As a matter of fact, I have a piece of the helicopter that was given to me last week by a young man whose father was a state policeman and was present at that helicopter crash, and took a piece of the helicopter that had broken loose. And the father had written, Republican candidate Arch Moore crashed. So I was surprised to see that. I still have the same suit, still have the same shirt, same tie, on the same rack. Don't ask me to wear it, because the backside of it is completely gone.
You told the press the following day, I'm convinced the Lord voted for us yesterday. Was that statement politically calculated, or is that still how you really feel?
Well, to say, was it calculated? Did anybody talk about it? No, it just came up as the press came into the hospital to do. They said, well, what impact will this have on the election? And my answer was, well, I don't know what impact it's going to have, but I got a sneaking suspicion the Lord voted for me yesterday. And that was the sum total of it.
Do you think that statement helped you in any way?
Well, you know, I only won by 13,000 votes, so I had to have everybody on my side.
Less than 13,000.
Yeah.